Let's move on to the Pie menu, whose shortcut is V. Hold the left mouse button and move the cursor horizontally to adjust brush size. Hold Shift to adjust the strength, and press Escape or click the right mouse button to exit. Also, it assembles many handy parameters. Let's go through them one by one. First, Brush Options, which modifies the parameters of brushes. Check Enable 3D Brush to activate 3D Brush. Then there's Auto Switch, which changes the mode between 2D and 3D when the brush is out of reach of the hair. Moving on to Scale Brush, it determines whether the brush size changes when zooming in or out. Okay, next one, Show Color, displays color groups. And Color Group is used for editing color groups. Here's a handy tip. Hold V and move the cursor in the direction of the Pie menu, and then release the key. You'll notice that the brush in that direction gets selected. However, please note that this method won't work if you don't move away from the Pie menu. Press Escape or right mouse button to close the Pie menu. Now let's dive into another shortcut, J. Press J to show the brush menu, which includes the color group panel and brush parameters. The brush menu is not loaded by default. You may only see the Load Brush List button. Simply click it to load the brush list. Let's see how it works. Add will add brushes to the list, up to a maximum of 14 brushes. You can rearrange the order of brushes. Moving on to Clear, you notice that all the brushes are removed except for a few comb brushes. Next is Reset, which resets the list to its initial state. The cross button is used to delete unused brushes. And you can directly switch to another brush here. The Auto Hiding Pie menu option allows you to exit the menu after a left click. Otherwise, you need to right-click and press Escape to exit. Now let's shift to Brush Instructions. In the end panel, you find 3D brush options. Enable it. Now the brush switches from 2D to 3D mode and is always vertical to the normal direction of the surface. Please note that Auto Switch only works when Enable 3D Brush is checked. In 3D mode, the brush size remains the same when zooming in or out. If we disable brush scale, see, the brush keeps the same size in 2D mode. Next, let's move on to Smooth Brush. There are two modes, length and curvature. In length mode, hair length becomes even without altering the initial guideline shape. This means longer hairs get shorter and shorter ones get longer. The smooth brush can make hair smooth while keeping the rough shape, so it's perfect for chaotic guidelines. Okay, shift to Density Brush. It's used to add or remove guidelines based on a specific distance, which can be set by distance minimum, and you can finally get a nice even distribution. The Density Brush offers 3 modes. Currently, it's in Auto mode as you've seen. Now let's switch to Add mode. In this mode, the brush adds guidelines when the distance exceeds distance minimum, but it won't work if the distance is smaller. Alternatively, we have Subtract mode, which removes guidelines when the distance is less than distance minimum. Otherwise, guidelines stay the same. Count Max controls the maximum number of guidelines, and at the same time being constrained by distance minimum. However, when distance minimum is 0, The guideline count is entirely dictated by count max. Moving on, let's check out Interpolate. When enabled, it shapes newly added guidelines based on the existing ones. If we disable it, see, the guidelines are in initial state. Length allows you to control the length of newly added guidelines. Keep in mind that it won't work if Interpolate is active. Keys determines how many keys are added to the newly created guidelines. Now let's dive into the length brush. As the name suggests, it's used to manage guideline lengths. Here you can set a target length, which sets limits for both maximum and minimum lengths. The snake brush extends guidelines as you move it around. It operates in two modes, sphere and projected. In sphere mode, the brush works based on its size in 3D space. While in projected mode, it considers its size in a 2D view. Remember, the snake brush only works in 2D mode and is invalid in 3D mode. The next is the draw brush, which allows you to draw guidelines directly on the surface and is only effective in 2D mode. There are two drawing modes. Add, where you can draw guidelines on the surface, and Edit, which allows you to modify guidelines starting from a specific key. Keep in mind that the appropriate tolerance setting varies depending on the mesh size. Generally, larger meshes require a larger tolerance, and vice versa. We provide two segment modes: Fixed, where the number of segments follow a static value, and Auto, where the number of segments depends on the tolerance. Smaller tolerance values result in more segments. After that, let's look at Surface. Currently, it's disabled. Enable it and see, the newly drawn guidelines are automatically projected onto the surface. There are two projection methods available. View mode functions in 2D mode and is used in most cases, and normal mode, where the roots of the guidelines are made to be perpendicular to the mesh surface. Offset determines the distance between the drawn guideline and the surface. Alright, switch to the orange brush. It changes the direction while keeping the shape of the guidelines intact. Next, center brush. It pushes the guidelines to both sides along the brush's moving path, like this. Then repel brush. It pushes guidelines in the radial direction of the center of the brush as it moves. Okay, now let's take a look at how the curve works. As you can see, these guidelines are in their initial shape. Increase the curve tool, and you notice the newly added guidelines start to curve. Twist the brush can help generate swirl shape efficiently. Within the brush radius, guidelines form a swirl shape quickly. Strength control is provided, as well as two twist directions, clockwise and counterclockwise. You can switch between them at any time by holding Shift. You may find the swirl shape too perfect. To get a natural-looking shape, we provide a direction random, which affects the X and the Y axes. Next one, strength render. It makes the strength vary on every single get line. Therefore, it is also helpful to get an organic result. Okay, move on to part brush. It behaves similarly to center brush.